All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how I made this out of some pallet wood, a stencil, and some paint. Oh, and a couple of screws too. Stay tuned. So the first thing I'll do is grab my pallet wood boards and I'll set them up. The problem that you have with pallet wood boards is they're not really square, or they're usually bent. So what I have to do is line them up to see which works best as far as my sign is concerned. Once I have the boards lined up to where I want them, I'll take my stencil and I'll get an approximate size of how big I need the sign to be and where the stencil will actually be on the boards. After that, I'll cut the boards down to size. Just a heads up, this little triangle trick, the square trick that I used to use it as an edge to cut the boards did not really work as well as I thought it would. Unfortunately, I had to go back and recut the boards. They just weren't square. So it didn't really work out. But anyway, after I cut the boards to length, I'll cut these runners to length. This is scrap wood that I had laying around. This is a little bit thicker than the pallet boards. And it actually worked out well because the screws are a little bit too long to just use the pallet wood. So these work out much better. After I cut all the boards to size, I'll put down some glue. This adds to holding everything together. I'll still screw it together later on. I just like using the glue. Now what I'm going to do is sand all of the corners down, the edges down, and try to get all the rough splinters, things like that off of it. With this sandpaper, I think it's 60 grit on my palm sander, so it's a pretty aggressive grit. Okay, I will go over the top of the boards. What I do when I go over the tops, when you screw these pallet boards together, there's going to be high and low spots, so I'll try to even it out a little bit with this aggressive sandpaper. Plus it kind of helps with the stenciling later on. If the boards aren't exactly even, it will make it a little bit more, it makes it harder to actually stencil the boards. Okay, after I have everything sanded down, what I'll do is I'll put down my primary color, which in this case it's yellow. It's not mustard, even though it looks like mustard going onto the plate. But what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and put the yellow down, and I'll paint this on all of the boards. Now I did edit out a lot of this. Actually, I had to put, I think, 3 to 4 coats down of this yellow paint. But you can expect lighter colors like this, you're going to have to do multiple coats to get it to look nice. Okay, here I am just finishing up the first coat. And what I like to do between coats is I'll break out the hair dryer. Oh, I didn't even show it here, but yeah, what I'll do is I'll break out the hair dryer and dry it between coats. It speeds everything up. And then once everything is dry, I'll go ahead and sand the edges down. Again, this is the 60 grit sandpaper. I just have it on a little palm sander. But this actually does a pretty good job of giving it the rustic look and feel. Usually I can just round out the corners and sand down the high spots, and it'll give it a nice rustic, worn look. Next thing up is putting the stencil in place. Now I've said it before, and I'll say it again, it's always a good idea to measure, check, recheck when you put the stencil down. The reason being is once you start putting paint on the stencil, you can't change it. You have to basically start over. So once I figure out where the stencil is going to go, I will go ahead and use this blue painter's tape and paint this, paint. I will place the blue painter's tape down and make sure that the stencil stays in place. Man, that is a tough sentence to say. Okay, next color I'm going to put down is green. There are some spots in this stencil. It's supposed to be the grass. The snake is actually coming out of the grass. So I use this green. I think it's called camouflage. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it's a pretty good green for the flag. Now this is a little tedious because there are parts of the stencil that are supposed to be black and green, so you have to be really careful of what you're doing here. You can tape it off, I just didn't do that, so you just be careful. Take your time and make sure that you're not going outside the lines. Next color up is black. It's just your standard Americana craft paint black. What I'll do with this is I like to use the biggest sponge I have, so that way it covers the most area, and I will go over it multiple times. It is tedious, it does get boring, but if you're patient and you take your time, it usually turns out really well. Alright, now it's time to take off the tape and see how it looks. You want to be careful taking off the tape. You want to make sure that you're not moving the stencil around or smearing it, because you can mess up your lines. Okay, slowly lift up the stencil, and that's it. Put it over on the side in a safe spot so you don't get paint everywhere. I've learned that the hard way. And there you go, that's it. Alright, so you made it till the end of the video. Thank you. By the way, this flag is known as the Gadsden Flag. It was named after politician Christopher Gadsden, who designed it in 1775, and it was adopted and used by the Continental Marines during the Revolutionary War. That's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. The end.